Imagine this. You're sitting in the back seat of a car, scrolling through your phone, barely noticing the person behind the wheel. To you, they're just a driver, someone who's there to get you from point A to point B. But what if I told you that sometimes the person driving the car holds a secret so shocking, so life-altering, that it could change everything you thought you knew? What if the unassuming driver wasn't who they seemed to be at all? That's exactly what happened to Emily, a young woman who thought she was just taking a routine ride. But by the end of it, her world was turned upside down. Stick with me because this story isn't just about a ride, it's about secrets, deception, and a twist. So jaw-dropping, you'll be thinking about it long after this video ends. And trust me, by the time we're done, you'll never look at a driver the same way again. Now, let's talk about you for a second. Why are you here? Maybe you're curious. Maybe you've been in a situation where someone wasn't who they claimed to be. Or maybe you're just someone who loves a good mystery. Whatever the reason, I'm glad you're here, because this story is for you. It's for anyone who's ever wondered what lies beneath the surface of the people we meet every day. It's for anyone who's ever felt that gut instinct that something isn't quite right. And it's for anyone who's ever been blindsided by the truth. If that sounds like you, then you're in the right place. Because today, I'm going to take you on a journey, one that starts with a simple car ride and ends with a revelation so shocking you'll be on the edge of your seat. Let's set the scene. Emily was a 28-year-old marketing executive living in New York City. She was smart, ambitious, and always on the go. Like many of us, she relied on ride-sharing apps to get around the city. It was just another Tuesday evening when she requested a ride home after a long day at work. The car arrived, she got in, and the driver, let's call him John, seemed like your average everyday guy. Polite, quiet, and focused on the road. Emily didn't think much of him. Why would she? He was just the driver. But as the ride went on, something felt off. It wasn't anything obvious, just a strange vibe, a lingering feeling that something wasn't right. Have you ever had that feeling? That little voice in the back of your head telling you to pay attention? Emily brushed it off at first, but as the miles rolled by, that feeling only grew stronger. Here's where things get interesting. John wasn't just a driver. He had a secret one that would leave Emily stunned. But I'm not going to give it away just yet. Because this story isn't just about what happened to Emily. It's about what could happen to any of us. It's about the people we meet every day and the secrets they might be hiding. It's about trust, intuition, and the moments that change our lives forever. And it's about the question we all ask ourselves at some point. How well do we really know the people around us? As we dive deeper into this story, I want you to think about your own life. Have you ever been in a situation where someone wasn't who they seemed to be? Maybe it was a coworker, a friend, or even a stranger you met in passing. We've all had those moments where we've questioned someone's intentions, where we've wondered if there's more to them than meets the eye. That's what makes this story so relatable. It's not just about Emily and John, it's about all of us. It's about the masks we wear and the truths we hide. And it's about what happens when those masks come off. Now, I know what you're thinking. Just tell me what happened. Trust me. I get it. You're here for the twist, the big reveal, the moment that leaves you speechless. And I promise, you'll get it. But here's the thing, this story isn't just about the ending. It's about the journey. It's about the build-up, the tension, the moments that keep you guessing. Because that's what makes a great story, right? It's not just about the destination, it's about how you get there. And trust me, this journey is one you won't forget. So, let's keep going. As Emily sat in the back seat, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. John was quiet, too quiet. He didn't make small talk, didn't ask her how her day was. He just drove, his eyes fixed on the road. But every now and then, she'd catch him glancing at her in the rearview mirror. At first, she thought she was imagining it. But as the ride went on, those glances became more frequent, more intense. It was as if he was studying her, trying to figure her out. And then he said something that sent chills down her spine. Something that made her realize this wasn't just a routine ride. This was something else entirely. But what did he say? What was the secret he was hiding? And how did it change Emily's life forever? I'm not going to tell you not yet, because this is where the real mystery begins. This is where the story takes a turn you won't see coming. Narrow, dimly lit street, this is where I need you to stay with me. Because the answers are coming, but you're going to have to wait just a little longer. So grab a seat, get comfortable, and get ready for a story that will leave you stunned. Because by the time we're done, you'll never look at a driver or anyone else the same way again. And remember, this isn't just Emily's story. It's yours too. It's a reminder that sometimes the people we least expect are the ones with the biggest secrets. It's a reminder to trust your instincts, to pay attention to the signs, and to never underestimate the power of the truth. Because the truth, it can change everything. And in this story, it does. So, are you ready to find out what happened? Are you ready to uncover the secret that left Emily stunned? Then keep watching. Because this is one ride you won't want to miss. Emily's unease grew with every passing mile. The city lights blurred outside the car window, but her mind was far from the bustling streets of New York. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. John's silence was unnerving, but it was his occasional glances in the rearview mirror that truly set her on edge. Each time their eyes met, even briefly, she felt a chill ripple through her. It wasn't just curiosity in his gaze, it was something darker, something calculating. Emily tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was just tired, or shy, or having a bad day. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. Her instincts were screaming at her to pay attention, to stay alert. And then, he spoke. His voice was calm, almost too calm, as he asked her a question that made her blood run cold. Do you believe in second chances, Emily? The question hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and ominous. Emily froze. How did he know her name? She hadn't told him. She was sure of it. Her mind raced as she tried to recall their interaction from the moment she stepped into the car. She had been distracted, scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging him. Had she mentioned her name? No, she was certain she hadn't. And yet, there it was, her name, spoken with a familiarity that made her skin crawl. She forced herself to stay calm, to not let her fear show. I'm sorry, what did you say? She asked, her voice steady but her heart pounding in her chest. John didn't respond immediately. Instead, he let the silence stretch, the tension thickening with every second. Finally, he repeated the question, his tone softer this time, almost pleading. Do you believe in second chances? Emily didn't know how to answer. What did he mean? Was this some kind of test? A joke? Or was it something far more sinister? As the car continued to move through the city, Emily's mind began to piece together fragments of the evening, searching for clues. She thought back to the moment she had booked the ride. It had been a normal day, just like any other. She had left work late, exhausted but satisfied with the progress she'd made on a big project. The app had assigned her a driver with a high rating, and she hadn't thought twice about it. But now, as she sat in the back seat, she couldn't help but wonder if she had missed something. Had there been a sign, a red flag she had overlooked? She glanced at the driver's profile on her phone. His name was John, his photo showed a middle-aged man with a kind smile, and his rating was nearly perfect. But something about it felt off. The photo looked staged, almost too polished. And the reviews, while positive, were vague and repetitive, as if they had been written by the same person. Emily's stomach churned. Had she made a terrible mistake? Meanwhile, John's behavior grew increasingly strange. He began to hum softly, a tune that Emily couldn't quite place, but that felt eerily familiar. It was as if he was trying to send her a message, a clue that only she would understand. But what was it? And why did it feel so personal? Emily's thoughts turned to her past, to the people she had known, the mistakes she had made. Could this be connected to something from her life? Something she had tried to forget? Her mind flashed to a memory she had buried deep a night 5 years ago when she had been involved in a car accident. It had been a rainy evening and she had been driving home after a party. She had been distracted, her phone buzzing with notifications, and she hadn't seen the other car until it was too late. The crash had been devastating, and though she had walked away with only minor injuries, the other driver hadn't been so lucky. Emily had been cleared of any wrongdoing, but the guilt had haunted her ever since. Was this what John was referring to? Was this his idea of a second chance? But before Emily could ask, John took a sudden turn, veering off the route her app had mapped out. Her heart leapt into her throat. "Where are we going?" she demanded, her voice trembling despite her efforts to stay calm. John didn't answer. Instead, he accelerated, the car speeding down it. Emily's hands shook as she fumbled with her phone, trying to call for help, but the signal was gone. She was completely cut off, alone in the car with a man who seemed to know far more about her than he should. Panic surged through her as she realized the gravity of her situation. This wasn't just a ride anymore. This was something else entirely, something dangerous. As the car raced through the night, Emily's mind raced too, trying to make sense of what was happening. Who was John, really? Was he a stranger, or was he someone from her past, someone with a grudge? And what did he want from her? The questions swirled in her head, each one more terrifying than the last. She thought about her family, her friends, the life she had built for herself. Would she ever see them again? Or was this the end? But even as fear threatened to overwhelm her, a small part of her refused to give up. She had always been a fighter, someone who didn't back down from a challenge. And this, she realized, was the biggest challenge of her life. She had to find a way out, a way to turn the tables on John and uncover the truth. But how? The car finally came to a stop in front of an abandoned warehouse, its windows dark and its doors hanging open like a gaping mouth. Emily's breath caught in her throat as John turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. "We're here," he said simply, as if this were just another destination. Emily's mind raced. What was inside the warehouse? What was waiting for her? And most importantly, what was John's endgame? She didn't have the answers, but she knew one thing for certain. This was far from over. The real mystery was just beginning, and Emily was about to find out just how deep the rabbit hole went. But would she survive long enough to uncover the truth? Or would the secrets buried in that warehouse consume her forever? The answers were closer than she thought, but so was the danger. And as she stepped out of the car, her heart pounding and her mind racing, she knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same again. The warehouse loomed before Emily like a shadowy beast, its jagged edges cutting into the night sky. The air was thick with tension, and every step she took toward the entrance felt like a step into the unknown. John walked ahead of her, his movements deliberate. Emily's mind raced, trying to piece together what was happening. Was this a kidnapping? A revenge plot? Or something even more sinister? She glanced around, searching for an escape route, but the area was deserted, the only sound the distant hum of the city. Her heart pounded in her chest as she followed John inside, the heavy door creaking shut behind them with a finality that made her stomach drop. The interior of the warehouse was dimly lit, the faint glow of a single overhead bulb casting long, eerie shadows across the room. Emily's eyes darted around, taking in the stacks of crates, the rusted machinery, and the faint smell of oil and decay. It was a place forgotten by time, a place where secrets could be buried and never found. John stopped in the center of the room and turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "You're probably wondering why you're here," he said, his voice calm but with an edge that sent shivers down her spine. Emily nodded, her throat too dry to speak. She wanted to demand answers, to scream at him to let her go, but fear held her tongue. John studied her for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. He held it out to her, and with trembling hands, she took it. The image was faded, but she could still make out the faces a younger version of John, smiling beside a woman who looked strikingly familiar. Emily's breath caught. It was her mother. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Her mother had passed away 5 years ago, just months after the car accident that had haunted Emily ever since. She had always been close to her mother, and her death had left a void that nothing could fill. But what did this photograph mean? Why did John have it? And what did he want with her? Emily's mind spun with questions, but before she could ask, John spoke again. "Your mother and I, we were more than friends," he said, his voice tinged with sadness. "We had a life together, a life you never knew about." Emily stared at him, her heart racing. This couldn't be true. Her mother had never mentioned John, never hinted at another life. But as she looked at the photograph, at the way her mother smiled at him, she couldn't deny the connection. It was real. And it changed everything. John's story unfolded slowly, each word pulling Emily deeper into a web of secrets and lies. He told her about the life he had shared with her mother, a life hidden from the world. They had been in love, but circumstances had torn them apart. Her mother had chosen to raise Emily alone, leaving John behind. He had tried to move on, but he could never forget her. And when he learned of her death, it had shattered him. But there was more. John's voice grew quieter, more hesitant, as he revealed the final piece of the puzzle. "The accident," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. "It wasn't an accident. Someone wanted your mother gone. And they wanted you gone too." Emily's blood ran cold. What was he saying? That the crash had been intentional? That someone had tried to kill them? Her mind reeled as she tried to process the implications. If John was telling the truth, then the life she had been living was built on a lie. And the danger wasn't over. As the weight of his words settled over her, Emily felt a surge of anger. How could he keep this from her? How could he let her live in ignorance, never knowing the truth about her mother, about the accident, about the threat that still loomed over her? She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but before she could, a noise from the shadows made her freeze. The sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoed through the warehouse. John's expression darkened, and he stepped in front of Emily, shielding her from whatever was coming. "Stay behind me," he whispered, his voice tight with tension. Emily's heart pounded as the footsteps grew closer, and then a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, his face obscured by a hood. But there was something about him, something familiar that made Emily's stomach churn. She couldn't place it, but she knew, deep down, that this man was connected to everything to her mother. To the accident, to the danger that had followed her all these years. The man stopped a few feet away, his hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed, but his presence menacing. "John," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "I see you've brought her here. Good. Saves me the trouble of finding her myself." John tensed, his body coiled like a spring. "Stay away from her," he growled, his voice filled with a protectiveness that surprised Emily. The man chuckled, a cold, humorless sound. "You always were sentimental," he said, "but sentiment won't save her. You know what I'm here for." Emily's mind raced. What did he want? What was he talking about? She felt like a pawn in a game she didn't understand, caught between two men with a history she couldn't begin to unravel. But one thing was clear, this man was dangerous. And he wasn't going to let her walk away. The tension in the room was palpable, the air thick with the promise of violence. Emily's instincts screamed at her to run, to get as far away as possible, but she was frozen in place, her eyes darting between John and the stranger. She didn't know who to trust, who to believe. John had kept secrets from her, but he had also protected her, shielded her from the truth to keep her safe. And now, he was standing between her and a man who clearly meant her harm. But why? What was the connection between them? And what did it all have to do with her mother? The questions swirled in her mind, each one more urgent than the last. But before she could make sense of it, the man took a step forward, his hand moving to his side. Emily's breath caught as she saw the glint of metal, a knife, sharp and deadly. The stakes had just been raised and the danger was closer than ever. But as the man advanced, Emily realized something. She wasn't just a victim in this story. She was the key. And whatever happened next, it would change everything. The knife glinted in the dim light, its sharp edge catching Emily's eye as the man took another step forward. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure it could be heard across the room. John stood firm in front of her, his body tense, ready to act. But Emily knew this wasn't just about him protecting her anymore. This was about survival, about uncovering the truth that had been buried for far too long. The man in the hood smirked, his voice dripping with malice as he spoke. "You really think you can stop me, John? After all these years, you're still playing the hero. But heroes don't win in the real world." John didn't flinch. "This ends tonight," he said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet fury. "You're not walking out of here." The man laughed, a cold, hollow sound that sent chills down Emily's spine. "We'll see about that." Before Emily could react, the man lunged, his knife slicing through the air with terrifying speed. John moved just as quickly, shoving Emily out of the way and grappling with the man. The two of them crashed to the ground, their struggle fierce and chaotic. Emily scrambled to her feet, her mind racing. She had to do something, but what? She looked around desperately, her eyes landing on a rusted metal pipe lying nearby. Without thinking, she grabbed it, her hands trembling but her resolve firm. She couldn't just stand there and watch. This was her fight too. As the men wrestled on the ground, Emily raised the pipe, her heart pounding in her chest. But before she could strike, the man in the hood managed to kick John off him, sending him sprawling. He turned to Emily, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous intensity. "You're just like your mother," he sneered. "Always in the way." Those words ignited something in Emily, a fire she didn't know she had. Her fear melted away, replaced by a fierce determination. She swung the pipe with all her strength, catching the man off guard. It connected with his shoulder and he stumbled back, cursing. But he wasn't down yet. He lunged at her again, his knife slashing wildly. Emily dodged, her movements fueled by adrenaline. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw John getting to his feet, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. He charged at the man, tackling him to the ground once more. This time, John managed to disarm him, sending the knife skittering across the floor. Emily didn't hesitate. She grabbed the knife and held it tightly, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. The man glared at her, his face twisted with rage. "You think this changes anything?" he spat. "You'll never be safe. Not as long as I'm alive." But Emily wasn't afraid anymore. She looked at John, who nodded silently, giving her the strength to do what needed to be done. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, the knife in her hand. "This is for my mother," she said, her voice trembling but filled with resolve. And then, in a moment that felt like it lasted an eternity, she plunged the knife into the man's chest. His eyes widened in shock, and then he slumped to the ground, lifeless. The warehouse fell silent, the only sound the ragged breathing of Emily and John. It was over. The man who had haunted their lives, who had taken so much from them, was gone. But the weight of what had just happened settled over Emily like a heavy blanket. She dropped the knife, her hands shaking as she stared at the man's lifeless body. Is this what she would have wanted?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. John stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Your mother was strong, Emily. Stronger than anyone I've ever known. She would have done whatever it took to protect you. And now you've done the same." His words brought a small measure of comfort, but the reality of what had happened was still sinking in. Emily looked at John, her eyes filled with questions. "Who was he?" she asked. "Why did he want us dead?" John sighed, his expression heavy with regret. "His name was Victor. He was a business partner of your mother's. But he was also a criminal. When she found out what he was involved in, she tried to expose him. He couldn't let that happen, so he orchestrated the accident, hoping to silence her forever. And when that didn't work, he came after you. Emily's heart ached as she processed his words. Her mother had been a hero, risking everything to do what was right. And now, Emily had done the same. But at what cost? As they left the warehouse, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, Emily felt a strange sense of closure. The truth had been revealed, the danger had passed, but the scars would remain. She looked at John, who had been a stranger just hours ago, but now felt like the only person who truly understood her. "What happens now?" she asked. John gave her a small, sad smile. "Now, we move forward. Your mother would have wanted that. She would have wanted you to live your life, to be happy. And I'll be here, if you'll let me, to make up for lost time." Emily nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope. She had faced her darkest fears and come out stronger on the other side. And as they walked away from the warehouse, leaving the shadows behind, Emily knew one thing for certain: her mother's legacy would live on through her. And she would honor it, no matter what. But just as they reached the car, Emily noticed something in John's hand, a small, folded piece of paper. "What's that?" she asked. John hesitated, then handed it to her. "It essay letter. From your mother. She wrote it for you, just in case. Well, just in case something happened to her." Emily's hands trembled as she unfolded the paper, her mother's familiar handwriting bringing a flood of emotions. The letter was short but filled with love and wisdom, a final message from a woman who had sacrificed everything for her daughter. As Emily read the last line, her eyes filled with tears. "Remember, Emily," it said, "the truth will set you free. But it's what you do with it that defines you." And in that moment, Emily knew she had found not just the truth, but herself. The journey had been long and painful, but it had led her here to a new beginning. And as she got into the car, the sun rising behind them, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The road ahead would be uncertain, but for the first time, she was ready to face it.